Hey, what's up, world? So, last night I caught this video posted by High Impact Commercials. Now, I call him High Impact Commercials because his videos are actually mostly commercials. Let's look at this video. He starts off, he has a minute of commercials, a minute of advertisements, and then the information that he covers, he only covers it from 1 minute to about the 5 minute and 45-second marker, or 5 minute and 50-second marker, about. And the rest is more commercials. High impact commercials. That's why he gets that name. So in this video, Brian covers a very interesting article, although, like many of the things that Brian covers, it is filled with holes. But before I go into this article that he covered, I want to go over 2 lies that he says in this video. The first lie, which is a lie he has repeated many times, is that COVID-19 has not been isolated or identified. When in fact, anybody who does a quick web search will find several articles talking about how COVID-19 was in fact isolated and identified, and not only identified, but according to this Reuters article, its complete genome has been sequenced. So it's interesting that Brian, he has cherry-picked some information that might suggest that, but I've never seen Brian try to debunk any of these articles or any of these claims that it has been in fact identified, isolated, and its entire genome has been sequenced. Why has Brian, or High Impact Commercials, kept this information from his audience? He hasn't even mentioned it, hasn't even attempted to debunk it. Now, I, of course, believe it's because he's either an idiot or a total gatekeeping shill whose real purpose is to make the truth community look like a bunch of crazy idiots, much like other people who have done the very same thing. I'm not going to mention their names. And the other lie that Brian feeds to his audience is that this study, or this information that he looks at, or that this article covers, does not consider those who got the Johnson & Johnson one-shot vaccine as vaccinated. He's like, yeah, they don't even consider them vaccinated. That is not true. So let's look at this article. Actually, before we look at this article, let's look at my journey at finding this article or researching this article. So after I saw this video of Brian's, I decided to try to look for this article. So I typed the title of this article into Google. And not surprising, because Google is also a gatekeeper of information, they do not have this article on their first page. Okay, so what I did is I decided to go to DuckDuckGo. By the way, we're going to look at this too in a second. So I decided to go to DuckDuckGo to find that article. And even DuckDuckGo, surprisingly, did not have the exact article that he covered. The exact article that he covered was from this site called The Exposed, or Expose, or something like that. However, I did find this fact-checking article of that article. So let's go check out this fact-checking article. So fact check. Misleading statistics says vaccinated make up 4 in 5 COVID-19 deaths in England. So of course, they focus, they don't focus on the timeline. So of course, this article in a way, and actually in many ways, is also misleading. But let's cover it real quick. So of course, it goes over the basic stuff. It gives some background. It talks about this site covering it. It shows a tweet that's covering it. And of course, this is covering this time period between 15 November and 12th December of the year 2021. So this is how the article has attempted to fact check it or correct the record. It says, the article includes tables, and the article that it's referring to is the one that Brian covered, from UKHSA report, which can be read in full here. I don't know why Brian didn't actually look at the full report. I'm not going to do it in this video because it's going to take very long. So table 10 on page 37 looks at COVID deaths and is reproduced in the article, but not completely. The article removed the footnote from table 10 that specifically addresses the correct interpretation of the data. The omitted footnote reads, In the context of a very high vaccine coverage in the population, even with a highly effective vaccine, it is expected that a large proportion of cases, hospitalizations, and deaths would occur in vaccinated individuals, simply because a large proportion of the population are vaccinated than unvaccinated, and no vaccine is 100% effective. This is especially true because vaccination has been prioritized in individuals who are more susceptible or more at risk of severe disease. Individuals in risk groups may also be more at risk of hospitalization or death due to non-COVID-19 causes, and thus may be hospitalized or die with COVID-19 rather than because of COVID-19. Now, of course, this information doesn't at all negate this information to be precise. 4 out of 5 people who died in England between these dates were vaccinated. The point is that what's going to happen is that people who are dumb enough to believe anything that Brian says without looking into it themselves, they're going to mindlessly repeat what Brian has to say. They're going to mindlessly repeat his talking points. And then their normie friends, who they're trying to convince, these people who are either on the fence or who, don't believe in conspiracy theorists at all or truthers at all, they're going to do some research and they're going to be like, wow, my crazy truther friend, my crazy conspiracy theorist friend, left this information out completely. They left this very important, they'll see it as very important, even though it's not that important. They'll say they left out this very important information. And then they're going to look at their truther friend like they're an idiot. And it's going to discredit the truth community. And that is exactly what Brian does. He discredits the truth community. I believe it's either because he's an idiot, or since he has done it so many times, and because he's unwilling to debate me, it's probably because he's an intelligent asset. Which makes sense because the dude is ex-military. I don't know exactly what military branch he served or how long he served in the military. It's a question that I would ask him if he ever chooses to debate me, which I know he won't because he knows I'll expose him. But it's a question that his audience should be asking him. What military branch did you serve in, and how long did you serve in the military? But let's step away from this. Of course, I know people can argue this, and a problem that I have with this is that if you look at the UK vaccination rate, it's about 76%. And if you look at the deaths that occurred in this time period, about 76% of them were the vaccinated. It shouldn't be an exact representation of the population that has been vaccinated. If the vaccination is safe and effective, even to some degree, this number should be much lower. Yeah, it should be higher than this number because, as the article says, so many of the people are vaccinated, but it shouldn't be like an exact parallel or an exact representation of the population that is vaccinated. Now, when I was doing this research on Google, I came across this information here, which is also very interesting. Let's look at it. Here's this article. This comes from this site, Office of National Statistics, which is a .gov United Kingdom website. And there's an interesting little chart here. And that is this chart which goes over the total deaths between the vaccinated and unvaccinated. So it has this category, which says, by the way, this is between this time period, January 1st of 2021 and October 31st, 2021. So this information came out before this information. So maybe this information here should be accounted for in this information here. So as you can see here in this time period, most of the people who died from COVID-19 were the unvaccinated. 938.9. I do not know how they get 0.9s and points or fractions of a number when it comes to deaths. That's very strange if you ask me. I would love to know how they're crunching their numbers to get these numbers. So then it breaks down, I'd say, what is this? Probably like 300 deaths from the vaccinated, from COVID-19, that is. Then they have non-COVID-19 deaths, which is very, very interesting because the non-COVID-19 deaths, actually more of the people who are vaccinated are dying. However, this makes sense because once again, the population, you have to adjust for the population. Most of the people in the population are vaccinated. And you also have to account for the fact that the vaccinated aren't still locked down like the unvaccinated. So the vaccinated are more likely to be going out to bars and drinking and doing activities that will get them into trouble. However, I will say it would be interesting to know how many of these people who were vaccinated and who didn't die from COVID-19 died from possible adverse events or died under sudden and somewhat suspicious circumstances. So when you account for all of that, it all sort of makes sense, and really it's not necessary to make a big fuss out of this. Does this mean that I'm pro-vaccine? Definitely not. Not at all. Does this mean that I buy into the government's narrative? Most definitely not. I just thought that I should put this information out there because I'm trying to be neutral and unbiased and put the information that the normies are going to find out there so that people who are in the truth community can be aware of the counter arguments and all of the information that is out there. This is just me being transparent, which is something that all truthers should be. Anyway, I'm going to leave this video here. I have a religious exemption paper to work on. I am currently in the process of working on a religious exemption paper for my college because they're forcing everyone to go back into in-person classes, and my college requires a vaccine for in-person classes. So they're trying to, force us to get vaccinated. They're saying, no, we're going to remove the online classes so that those people who aren't vaccinated are forced to get vaccinated if they want to continue in school. They're getting rid of our option to do classes online, or at least mostly getting rid of that option. So I have to finish a religious exemption paper, and I'll be making another video after that religious exemption paper, and I'll make a video on that religious exemption paper if and when it gets approved. If it gets approved, I will share the religious exemption paper with all of you so that maybe you can try to, I don't want to say copy it, but you can use it as a source to write your own religious exemption papers if you have to. So with that said, I'll see you all in the next video.